Hey, another writers' conference. Time to get out and meet hundreds of new people. Boy, doesn't that sound like a great thing to do with your free weekend? Not if you're an introvert. In this episode number 55 of Horrible Writing. That will never work. You can't push that. Seriously? Don't. Oh my God, that's other things you can do. That's bad. You probably should find other hobbies. You ever learn how to stop? Stop. Be happy. Don't bother me. I've seen better papers. Do you really want to do? And my third grade, give it up. Welcome to Horrible Writing, the rawest, most candid, in-your-face writing show on the interwebs because none of us have time to suck. Let's do this. Hey everybody, Paul Sadine, your host here. So I had an interesting experience this week that led me back to the Horrible Writing Writers Support Group on Facebook, which you need to join if you're not part of the group yet. I took a poll this morning about who is an introvert, who is an extrovert, and then I had a wonderful member of the group, Whitney, add ambivert to, or I think Julie did. Whitney or Julie did. My apologies. My short-term memory is horrible. My long-term memory is horrible. One of those two fine, outstanding, wonderful writers and members of that community either added the ambivert or added an article from Psychology Today to the discussion we were having about it. This all was precipitated by a podcast that I listened to this week from another writer. And on that podcast, they had a guest who is hosting conferences, and the guest asserted that writers are introverts. And I immediately took exception to that because I'm not an introvert at all. I'm an extrovert, though I am a developing introvert. So I wanted to talk about that in this episode because, one, it's not true. It's a false dichotomy, which is, a logical fallacy in and of itself. But it's not an accurate reflection of the writer community. Now, sure, there are a lot of introverts in the writer community. You may be one of them. But that doesn't mean all of us are. And there's a couple problems with this, trying to establish the writer community as monolithic. First and foremost, it's not inclusive. And if there's anything I'm big on and becoming bigger on, it's full inclusivity for everyone of all types. Everyone. No one should be excluded from anything. And as writers, creating new worlds and new characters, and some of you are nonfiction, you're not doing fiction. The way you tell the story, the way you research your story must be as inclusive as you can make it. Inclusivity is a hot button issue for me. And to proclaim or assert that writers are inclusive and therefore these conferences are wonderful opportunities for introverts to gather together is problematic because it, by the nature of that assertion, excludes people. Even if that's not what you're meaning to do, that's what is done when you categorize an entire population, an entire demographic as a thing, as one thing, as monolithic. People like me, I don't care. That's just my attitude in life. I'm happy with what I've accomplished in life. Now I want to spend these years of my life chasing my dreams and helping others chase theirs. And so I will react strongly if I feel someone has been or said or done something unfair, which that statement is. Now, that probably was not the intention at all, but as someone with a platform, it's imperative that I use this platform to balance the argument in the public space. There is no monolith. We are not all introverts. We are not all extroverts. In fact, the Psychology Today article, which I will link in the show notes, that was provided by Whitney, I'm almost certain of that, talks about ambiverts. So people, situational personality, if you will. You can be extroverted or introverted depending on the situation you find yourself in. Now, to clarify, introversion, extroversion doesn't mean you dislike or like people. It's where you re-energize. It's where you draw your energy from. Very few of us can hole up in our houses day in and day out, never interacting with humanity. Thanks a lot, evolution. Really appreciate that. Many of us would probably prefer to try, at least give it a go, at least an honest go. But I challenge you to test it. I'm a writer. I spend a lot of time writing. I also happen to telework. So I spend all of my life alone until my wife gets home from work or we go out and do things. We moved here. We're not from this area. So we don't have decades-old relationships to call on. You know, we met new people and you develop those relationships, but they're not strong bonds. So I spend an inordinate amount of time on my own. And I can guarantee you that evolution has done us no favors in that fault, in that aspect. We need interaction with others in the species. So how much we and where we draw our energy from is critical to understand, which is why I don't like this assertion. When you think about it, you think about this fixed personality mindset versus this growth personality mindset. If you believe that you're an introvert because you took a test that said you were, or people said you were, you don't necessarily truly feel that, but you feel more comfortable re-energizing on your own, doing some yoga, doing some writing, whatever it may be. That's fine. But to assert that you are this one thing in this one thing only can be damaging. Beyond the inclusivity that I talked about earlier, if you're told repeatedly, often enough, that you are this thing, you can become this thing. It's that fixed mindset. And when you do that, it can be damaging. You can convince yourself that you are an introvert. Therefore, you should never go to a writer's conference and meet other human beings. Heaven forbid. You can't do that. And think about the opportunities lost, the networking, the instruction, the lessons that you would have learned at a conference that you avoided, especially the networking, those mixers, those awkward mixers where you've got to talk to people you don't know. Introverts can do it. Sarah Ray Werner of the Right Now podcast her and I have had numerous conversations because I assert she's not an introvert. She asserts that she is. We have fun-loving debates about her introversion, but you can do these things. They can be exhausting, but at the same time, just seeing that you have that potential is critical. I would hate to think that anybody in the horrible writing community misses out on networking opportunities because of this fixed mindset that they have. The growth mindset, understanding that with very few exceptions, you are part introvert, part extrovert, or vice versa, can suit your needs, because then you can situationally utilize that part of your personality and recover as necessary. I used to be very outgoing and gregarious. one of those annoying people who could talk to everybody at a party, could laugh a lot. And it wasn't until I was older, I was actually taking a personality instructor course to teach people about the true colors personality spectrum when I had to give a presentation. Those of you who are familiar with it will know what an orange personality is. I'm an orange, blue dominant personality. So it means I'm very outgoing, energetic, spontaneous, and very caring, giving type of personality. And I gave this very fun instructional piece that we had to do for each other. And as soon as I was done, the instructor turned to one of the members in the audience who was agreeing. They are big-brained, analytical. They're structural, and they analyze, and they're the 40,000-foot view people, 60,000-foot view people, big brain thinkers. The instructor turned to that class member of mine and said, how did he feel after Paul's presentation? And the guy looked me right in the eyes, slumped over his desk, elbows up, propped up on the table, shoulders slumped, head nodding forward, and said, "I'm absolutely exhausted." I had no idea that my outgoing personality does that or could do that to people. It was a real eye-opener for me. And I appreciated it because I grew from it. And I temper that. Believe it or not, I temper my personality to try to be accommodating to as many people as I can. Over the years, I've needed less and less extroversion to re-energize. In fact, the more focused I am on my writing goals, the more I've appreciated the solitary nature of what we do, sitting in this room that you see and writing, or going on a walk with my recorder and me and writing by dictation, but alone. And my balance is very much towards re-energizing in solitary terms than it is being out and around people, but I still need that. I'm an ambivert. I need that mix. As I imagine, the vast majority of you need a mix. You couldn't operate solely one way or another. Challenge that fixed mindset that you are this thing or that thing. I don't like false dichotomies. Anyone who knows my political opinions knows I don't like either or choices. That's not the way reality works. So I push back against this and that individual. And if I ever go to one of his conferences, I will challenge him on this fact that writers and writer conferences shouldn't be promoted as a safe place for introverts. Not if we want to be an inclusive community, because when we assert that, again, like I said, we exclude people. We tell them they are the other, even if that's not what you mean. We tell them that they are the other. And we don't want that. And I don't want that for you. I don't want you to have that fixed mindset that you are this thing or that thing, that you're an extrovert and you're not allowed to attend writer conferences because it's a place for introverts. It's something you need to be aware of. It's something you have to be smart about. If you do understand that the predominant population is introverted and you may exhaust them by the way you interact, understand that. Prepare yourself when you go toward that. And introverts, prepare yourself for us. If we are presenting as extroverted, entertain us, but at the same time, don't be shy about having those boundaries, setting those boundaries. And if you're wearing out, just let them know. Sorry, own it. I'm very much an introvert, and this has been a great conversation. I'm getting tired. The emotionally mature of us, extroverts, will understand. We'll get it. And you could be providing a learning opportunity for those who aren't necessarily emotionally mature enough to handle that or emotionally intelligent enough to handle that. We're all the same in our own unique ways. And let's love that and embrace that about ourselves. I do want to let you know that one of the things I did already include long before I heard this podcast, I did include this topic in my upcoming nonfiction book, Novel Idea to Podcast, How to Sell More Books Through Podcasting. So even though I've told you I'm an extrovert, don't feel like when that book is done that you can't check into it if you are interested in learning about how you can podcast to help you sell more copies of your book. This isn't written from the perspective of someone who is an extrovert talking to other extroverts. I've tried to include everyone, and I have reached out to introverts, and I've got a number of subject matter experts involved, many of whom do identify as introverts. So there will be content in there specific to this topic, again, because I think we should be inclusive and help lift each other up. Speaking of how we can lift each other up, are you following me on Twitter at Pulsating or at Writing Horrible? What about the Facebook group? I'm talking about, besides my author Pulsating Facebook page or the Pulsating, don't ask, long story, on Facebook, this show now has a Facebook space dedicated to you, the listener of this show, this community. We congregate there, we help each other out there, we celebrate and challenge each other there. It is very much in my personality. It is the thing that I obligate my Facebook time to, and then I check my friends' lives and then get off Facebook. But I do check that space and interact there often, and there are homework assignments there. So if you are a part of that group and you have been and you have not got those 2 homework assignments done, get them done. We grow together. We learn together, social learning. And it's part of how we help each other out. It's still intimately small, so you're not running into a space of thousands of people. It is also a non-self-promo space. We do have a weekly post about our accomplishments, but this is not, and nor will it ever be, a space for people to talk about selling their book. Buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. Ain't going to happen, folks. There's plenty of other places to go do it. This space is for us. So if you enjoy this podcast, and I've had some amazing interactions this week, some really humbling interactions this week from a couple of listeners who are in that page, or on that page, who really jumped back in, found their passion to write again because of this show. I can't tell you how much that means to me. I wish someone had done that for me in the early 2000s. And when I deployed to Iraq, came home for a few months, and deployed again to Korea and missed a year and a half of my life, more than a year and a half of my life, because of military commitments, and I lost the passion to write. I wish there had been someone there to kick me in the ass to get me writing. And I'm glad to hear that what I've created with this show and that Facebook group is doing that. But I want to hear and see from more of you. We are only as rich as the community is willing to offer of itself. The more of us that are there, willing to share, not worried about being in it to win it, we're there to help others, we also get that in return. There's very much in my spirit. We give of ourselves as much as we can. You will always have people who are just around to get. They will always be there. But just as I teach my students in my professional life, Pareto principle, 80-20, I don't spend 80% of my energy on that 20% of the issue. If someone's in there just to get something for themselves, it will come out in the wash. They will fade away. I don't focus on them. I focus on the wonderful people in this community who are willing to give to others first, because they know we will all give in our own way when they need something as well. So come join us over there. That's my big sell for the show. In addition, though, on a serious note, rate and review the show, please. If you love it, especially rate and review it. I would love for this show to get more attention from other writers who are like us, who don't necessarily always need the conversation to be on craft, because there's a human being behind this microphone. There's a human being behind each one of those Facebook profiles in the Horrible Writing Writer Support Group. And there's a human being behind that pen or that keyboard or that recorder for dictation who is creating for everyone in the world to enjoy. And I embrace that. I embrace the spirit of humanism and lifting each other up. And I want more of you around. That's my extrovert version coming across. I realize that. Some of you are going to avoid it because that's not you. I promise. I just took the poll this morning. Probably 70% of that group identified as introverts. So you're safe. We're all safe. All right, go rate and review the show. And please help me draw from more humanistic writers in the community. Also, I will let you know when Novel Idea to Podcast is released. It's getting really close. Very, very close. Working hard. Now, some of you will notice that this was yet a second back-to-back episode of just me. And I promise there's a reason for it. As soon as that accident is corrected, I will let you know, and you will more likely than not get 2 back-to-back author interviews. In fact, the next episode will be an author interview, and I'm very excited to get it out. What I have coming up that I can tell you about is Dave Chesson is coming up. You probably know him from KDP Rocket or Kindlepreneur. Yes, I got Dave on, and we talked about the writer-business person balance, and it was great. Now, the individual who was supposed to be here this week, we had some technical difficulties, and that person is scheduled to be chatting with me next week. And it's going to be a quick turn. Essentially, as soon as I'm done with that interview, I'm going to have to edit it and get it up because I promised this individual that it would be out in the middle of the month or now, and didn't work out so much. So we're going to get that fixed. And when you find out who I got, you're going to be thrilled because I was thrilled and honored. All right, so that's it for updates. I want to wish everybody a wonderful rest of your September and early October. It's the fall. It's autumn. It's the season of death. It is the best time in the world. I love this season. It's a great time of year to be enjoying those crisp days, but getting inside and focusing on your writing. So, until you hear from me again, keep being epic. This has been Horrible Writing, and hopefully after this episode, you suck less than you did at the beginning. I am Paul Sading, your host extraordinaire. You can find me over on the Twitterverse at Writing Horrible and over at paulsading.com/horrible-writing. Until next time, suck less.